In this week's episode of the Crowdfunding Nerds, we discuss the difference between investors and consumers, true fans versus complainers, leveraging true fans, and finding your first employees. Let's get into it. Hey folks, this episode is brought to you by Hero Time Manufacturing. That is Hero Time, the numeral one.com. Hirsch Gleck has been a regular on our podcast. We highly recommend his services. He is a man of integrity. Hero Time, they can make anything. They've got competitive pricing, and they even do game prototypes. So make sure to check out Hero Time, numeral one.com. A link is in the show notes. And if you use the code crowdfundingnerds101, you can get a 3% discount on your production through them. Let's get back into the episode.
Game begin.
Let's go.
I used to be a marketer like you until I took an arrow to the knee.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. I am your host, Andrew Lowen, and I am joined as always by Sean, who is sexy and Irish and South African. And welcome to the show.
It's a
sexy
strange
Irish
mix.
Sean. Well, so on this episode, we wanted to talk about 1,000 true fans. The concept of 1,000 true fans is known by many. I can't remember what book it was. I think it's called 1,000 True Fans. But recently I received an email from Seth Godin, who is a really great marketing mind. I subscribe to his emails. I have for, has to be the last like 12 years or something like that I've just received either a daily or weekly digest of what's going on with Seth Godin's head. And 1,000 True Fans are, the concept is that if you spend time cultivating 1,000 quote unquote true fans, then your company can thrive. All it takes is 1,000 true fans for your company to thrive. And recently he wrote an article about this, and I figure it might actually be worth reading. But just in general, the concept is that not everyone who buys from you is a true fan. Not everyone who supports you is a true fan. In fact, not everyone who contributes to your project is a true fan. And there's a difference, a delineation. And we really wanted to kind of dive into that and talk about the types of people that you are looking for, through your marketing and whatnot, the types of people who will interact with you. And, just maybe my goal is to help you understand your people and understand who is a true advocate of yours and who is not, who has the capacity to be a true advocate for a long period of time, and maybe who will support you over the short term and then disappear. So that's kind of what I wanted to get into. It's been something on my mind a lot lately, and this article from Seth Godin really kind of made it bubble up to the surface. So any more thoughts on that before we get into the article, Sean?
Yeah, not to be confused with 1,000 Suns from Warhammer 40k. But I think in terms of 1,000 fans, or even like 1,000 emails that we seek to kind of capture for people before they launch, it's really important that people understand that each email is a person, and each person has a different level of enthusiasm for your project. And often when sometimes we get clients and they really want us to try and drive the cost per lead as low as possible, that's always really a bad move, because you can get lots of emails on your email list, but the question is, are they going to be people who are actually interested in what you're doing? Are they actually going to back? So it's almost better to spend more to get leads which are more qualified, that are going to be in this kind of 1,000 fan category, rather than people who are just, I'm somewhat interested, I'm not really going to back this. So something to keep in mind, even with your marketing, that yes, the goal is to have 1,000 fans, but not 1,000 emails, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Even, on my Deliverance email list, we've got over 10,000 emails. And of those people, I think about it, there were many of them backed the first go of the Deliverance campaign. But, in the first Deliverance campaign, we had 2,717 backers. 35% of those people returned to back the expansion, which is just over 900 people. And it might have been just slightly high, it's like 38% or something like that. And I remember it was above 900 and below 1,000. So it was curious to me when I thought about this. I thought, first of all, 35% conversion rate is really good. You know, I would be delighted if I had a conversion rate like that in my for my email list or whatever. It's just like an insanely high conversion rate when you think about it in terms of, you know, your email list conversion rate. Have 35% convert out of 2,700 is great on the new campaign. But when you think about it, you know, 900 or 1,000 people backed the second game that I made when they backed the first one. Maybe I do have a 1,000 true fans, almost 1,000 true fans. Maybe all it takes is like 2 crowdfunding campaigns for me, and I've got my quote unquote 1,000 fans that will back whatever I've made. But I have a feeling that it's going to be difficult to track maybe until I run another Kickstarter campaign. But I wonder how many people from the first campaign will have backed the second one and the third one and the fourth one, you know? And I'm assuming, especially if we switch from our Deliverance intellectual property to another project, that that number is going to be a lot lower, right? And so maybe, I don't know, maybe I only have 100 or 200 true fans. Maybe not even that many. I don't know, but it definitely started to get me to think a little bit. And let's talk about maybe the capacity to care. In fact, let's read the article first before we digress into, well, I guess into the material of the article.
Hey, crowdfunding nerds, if you're looking for an awesome fulfillment partner for US shipping, you should really consider Bridge Distribution and Fulfillment. I personally use them. I've used them for multiple projects. They do such a great job. They also can fulfill Amazon orders and get you prepped for Amazon and their warehousing team. I have been so happy using Bridge Distribution. I'm really proud that they're sponsoring us. If you reach out, bridgedist.com, that's bridgedist.com, let them know we sent you. All right, now back to the show.
So this was an article on Seth Godin's blog. We'll put the link in the show notes.
Short.
Yes. And it's labeled as 1,000 fans, which sort. And here's what it says. Not all customers are fans, and not all fans are the sort of customers you can thrive with. Cadres of supporters often migrate into one of 2 camps. The generous stance, which he says is a more positive riff from a 20-year-old Eminem track, which is Dear Stan, which was not a very positive fan interaction in the end. That was Andrew's commentary. I'll shut up now and just read the article. So the generous stands are there for the work and the change being made all the time. It's a form of support, but more than that, identity. Tribes with leaders making a difference, supporting each other, and spreading the word. These are the true fans. And the cranky fans who know they found a place where they'll be heard and who use that opportunity to split hairs and find something to be disappointed with. They are cranky because they care, but they're also cranky because it gives them power. They'll happily pirate the software, argue about a launch strategy, demand comp tickets to the event, and reserve their conversations for other insiders instead of spreading the word. They point out that the galvanic isolation in the new breakthrough product could have been even more sophisticated, or that the unreleased album is much better than this one. One of the most common complaints is that the hypothetical perfect imagined by a fan is so much better than the actually productive and powerful good created for them. I'm your best customer is what they might say when they're not at all. Their status comes from their insider knowledge and longevity, combined with an air of aloof superiority. These fans are sometimes called employees, voters, or critics. One reason for the split is that some creators and small businesses respond to early fan response by doing things to the audience, cashing out. Ooh, that's a good one. We'll come back to that later. As opposed to working to do things with and for them, leading. It puts some fans on the defensive, even if this particular creator has made the difficult decision to stick with the mission. When Kevin Kelly coined, that's who did it. When Kevin Kelly coined the term 1,000 true fans 15 years ago, he was describing more than fandom. He was articulating how the long tail could become a generative, resilient force for creators to create and for fans to benefit. Without a mass market driving production, we could move toward a world of delightful niches where small companies could thrive, serving relatively small audiences. This is the unheralded force behind important nonprofits, tech companies, and creators of all kinds, not mattering a little to the masses, but mattering a lot to a focused group, one that supports the work and spreads the word. Choose your fans, choose your future. So that's kind of the meat of the article. He does have a little bit of an expansion talking to his fans, which I guess I should read as well. He says this: I'm regularly amazed and delighted at how thoughtful and connected the readers of my work are. I learn from you every day, and I'm thrilled at the leadership my readers bring to their communities. I couldn't ask for a more engaged, thoughtful, and generous audience. That right there is some fan appreciation, right? Last paragraph says, at the same time, I see small businesses and creators that I care about struggling simply because their fans are not only taking them for granted, they're becoming entitled and insular as well. When fans commit to a movement and help it grow, they benefit. Not every group is going to become a movement, but if we don't bring others along, we're not going to make change happen. Movements move. The problem with taking something we care about for granted is that we don't get to do it for long. There you go. There's the article. So there's a lot that I'd love to just get into with this thing, but we don't have to start in order. I feel like the first thing I'd really like to just highlight is how Seth Godin said some creators and small businesses respond to early fan response by doing things to the audience which are like cashing out. You're treating the audience like a cash cow, and in response they treat you like a commodity. This is what I say, and I think that evidently Seth Godin agrees, where if you do things to your audience, if you give them things to buy from you, if that's all you're doing, then they're going to you're basically showing them you don't value who they are, you value what they have, you value their wallet, right? And I think that a huge difference is when you are working with your fans and for them, this concept of you're not just treating them like a dollar sign. Yes, they will transact with you and support your business and whatnot, but I think that the best companies tend to think about their fans as though they're like fellow fans together of the same product, and they're working on this on behalf of the fans. And one of the best things you can do for fans is to listen to them and make them feel heard, and to appreciate them. I think Seth actually wrote a paragraph in this article just simply appreciating his fans, which I think is a really important thing to do, to just simply be appreciative of what others are doing for you. What do you think about the whole cash out, issue?
Yeah, I completely understand that concept. I think it really comes down to there's really two paths here. There's two ways where you can run your business or treat your customer. You can treat your customer as that walking cash cow, and they're really just consumers, and they're just there to keep the machine going. Or you can view them as partners, and those people actually have a say in the development of your products. You actually seriously consider what they do. Them as like investors, but they're investing by receiving the product. And this is one reason why I'm no fan, to say the least, of investment banking or even the stock exchange with Wall Street, because I feel like it sort of creates this culture of consumerism where people don't care about companies or products. It's just money in, money out, and they treat corporations like that kind of consumer mentality. And I don't think it creates a great business culture or even great products. Crowdfunding, on the other hand, is very much this kind of small, your fans are your actual investors, and there is this partnership. They're not only giving you their money to see the thing come alive, they're also investing their time. And this idea of spreading the word then makes sense, because they almost become partners in your business, and they also want this cool thing to exist. So having those two types of mentalities, are you going to treat your customer base like consumers, like they're just like some animals on some ranch that you're just feeding them so that you can slaughter them and make a profit? Or are they your partners? Are they people that you are investing in, that you are hearing and listening to? It's a very different type of business. And I think it's one that's far more productive, far more healthy. And I think it produces better products in the long run.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we think about Wall Street, corporations treat us like cash cows. And so we have reacted in kind by investing and predicting, and we don't care if, I mean, I don't care if Apple loses $100 per share. I just care if I made money or not, right? And it's it you know, if I lost $100 per customer, it'd be devastating, you know, and there would be people that would be really sad for me, and many of my fans would be really sad, right? But I think that we're playing at a different level. We're also playing in a different world. You know, the corporate world has really been designed to extract money. It's corporations or businesses designed for one purpose, and that is just simply to make money and to continue its existence. It's a kind of a sad existence indeed. Like, they're actual entities that exist, that the government has given status of being separate than a person, and it's and those entities are just soulless and heartless, and their mind is only on money. And I think that many of us looking at corporations nowadays that you know, the large corporations that would be front, you know, top of mind, recognize that, and we treat them as they would treat us. It's like, if you make a good product, I'll buy your thing, but I'm not gonna, like, you know, tell you I appreciate you. I don't care. I'll tell people if I genuinely like the product. I'll tell people it's good, you know, like a car or whatever, a cell phone or whatever. But that's really it. And there are ways to kind of break the mold, and you see some corporations doing that. I think that you know, you've got like Apple and Tesla are two that I think, you know, people love driving their Tesla and talk about it all the time. You know, people love Apple and their iPhone and whatnot, and they always ask you, you know, they always ask you, why'd you get an Android? Why didn't you just get an iPhone? You know, and it's like a little bit of a tribal mentality, which I think is very interesting. Pokemon is another great one, you know, great example of, like, if you love Pokemon, you know, you're, or Magic the Gathering or whatever, like, there are tribes that have been built around some corporations, and these companies, even though they make money and they're designed to make money, they also find ways to delight their fans and delight their core audience, and sometimes a little can go a very long way, you know. And but yeah, I think that it's a very thin, or very easy to blur the lines, especially when you're getting started in crowdfunding, because you need to make money, and a lot of people are very desperate to make money because it's literally their dream that is on the line here, you know. And nobody cares about the dream as much as they do. And so the temptation is to kind of sacrifice a little bit of their character for a little bit more a result now. And I think that it caused you to suffer in the future. And we can get a little more specific, but I think that's a good kind of a general coverage of that for now.
Well, you mentioned the word tribe, and I want to kind of just re-examine that, because you could also insert the word cult. You know, people in my cult, and I feel like there's a danger here where this type of marketing can become quasi-religious, and you sort of have to be on guard of that too. I think there's a balance here, because using such terms like "spread the word" and "follow me," and these are kind of like religious terminology. It's like, it makes me somewhat uncomfortable.
Jesus say that to Matthew the tax collector?
Well, exactly.
I'm saying that
and I
same
almost
thing.
feel like, in secular societies with religion sort of being cast out, has there been a need for this type of community that used to be found in church and religious communities? They're now finding in corporations and businesses. So I think there's a balance here where, yeah, it's good to have this mentality of, you know, being part of a thing bigger than yourself. But I think there's limits to that, and it doesn't kind of exceed that. And maybe there's this idea of entitlements that he's talking to with certain fans, where it almost becomes their life, like their identity. Like, he even said this in the write-up, your identity being, like, I don't ever want my identity to be associated with products. Right?
Yeah.
That's a very dangerous place to be in. But I do think some people, they gravitate to certain IPs or games to an extent that is unhealthy, and it does become part of their identity, and then they become gatekeepers, and they can become quite toxic. So maybe that's an element that you have to be aware of as a publisher as well, to kind of also keep this in mind, that, yeah, your goal is to try to create these 1,000 fans, but you also want to be careful that they don't become fanatical.
Yeah. And, you know, I was listening to this I can't remember the guy's name, but the lead developer of World of Warcraft, or the head of World of Warcraft right now, gave a really excellent discussion. And let's see, Ian, his name is Ian Hazakostas. And anyway, he gave a talk about World of Warcraft and the fans over the last 20 years, and how Blizzard has kind of elected to treat the fans and other things. And as you know, Sean, as a very long time World of Warcraft player, you were you like me, where you just kind of became more and more annoyed with Blizzard and what Blizzard was doing? Um, I don't know. I felt like Blizzard never fully listened to the fans. Like when I played World of Warcraft for probably, I don't know, the first like 10 years that it was out. So like from maybe 11 years, 2004 to like 2015. Then it took a break and then came back in a future expansion, Mists of Pandaria. And then I just kind of took and then I stopped playing. But I remember there were so many times that Blizzard, I felt like, just failed to listen to the fans and did their own thing instead, and to the detriment of their community. And what we learned was in, I want to say it was 2015. I could be wrong. I think it was later, actually. World of Warcraft was the biggest MMORPG, the biggest game of all time. At one point, they had like over 13 million active players paying $20 a month or $15 a month. And they were huge. But then, everyone started talking about, oh, what's the WoW killer going to be? What's the next big thing? And I remember even Blizzard was working on a big MMO, and they eventually canceled it. And they were like, why would we continue investing resources into this when we have a game with a player base of 9 million active players or whatever? And so they were like, just put all their investment into World of Warcraft, and which is smart. It made hundreds of millions of dollars a month, and they're doing well. And so what I found is that the community got increasingly toxic, especially online. And over time, it's like you could always find someone complaining, always find someone saying Blizzard's awful, they just have no soul. And the question is like, why was that happening? And the way that they identified it was that they had this vision of what they wanted World of Warcraft to be. And like you said, Sean, there were tons of people, like there were fanatical zealots. I myself logged, at least 40 hours a week of WoW, maybe 8 hours a day times 6 or 7 days, is a lot of hours in World of Warcraft. And every week just raiding and farming and whatever. And it was I was definitely one of the more hardcore, but there were lots of different types of people that played that game. Richard, actually, who used to be on our podcast every week and still of course works at the company. I just think we record too early for him nowadays. He has never had a character reach max level, and he has like 10 characters in World of Warcraft. It's like, dude, you're such a noob. But he loves picking flowers and doing whatever, and hanging out
and fishing and just relaxing in the game.
Yeah, it's like that's what he does, and he really loves it. It's like, that's cool. And then there are others that are hardcore PvPers. Like, I don't think that you entered one raid. I think maybe once or twice. But
I only did it either to help people because I had really good PvP gear, or because I was trying to get some type of item for PvP. So I didn't like raiding.
Yeah, and you were a hunter, so nobody wanted to take you anyway.
Yeah.
But and you were a hardcore PvPer, and so was I, and we both did arena, we both did a bunch of dueling and things like that. And there were others that still did other things, like they were role players and things like that. And you have all of this wide variety, and World of Warcraft is probably one of the best case studies for a wide variety of true fans. If there's any company that I can say absolutely has 1,000 true fans, it's Blizzard, because anything they make is immediately going to make tons and tons of money. Because I bought into Warcraft Orcs and Humans way back in the day, got Warcraft 2, I got Warcraft 3, I got StarCraft 2, I got Diablo, 1, 2, 3, and so on, right? And World of Warcraft, of course. And I've paid that company tons of money. I would consider myself for a long time that I was a true fan of Blizzard Entertainment and World of Warcraft, especially. But even I fell off the bandwagon eventually because I felt like I was just on a gear treadmill. I was like running on a treadmill, going nowhere, but feeling like I was doing work. I'm getting really tired and exhausted running on this treadmill, but I'm going nowhere. It's like a new season comes out. Oh, all of your gear that you worked so hard to receive is now useless. And if you want to continue, you have to continue by doing all the things you just did again. And you're still paying us $15 a month. So I just felt like this, like I felt dumb after a while. And I remember saying, this game sucks. And, people would say, well, why don't you quit? And I would say, well, nothing's better. It's like I really kind of felt like I was being taken advantage of and abused and whatnot as a true fan. And so anyway, this discussion happens where Ian starts talking about the way that they used to look at their fans and the vision and whatnot. And he said that their vision was for like the development team for what is sustainable. Their next game is their next expansion. They're planning on 2 expansions down the road, and they know they're going to be around for a long time and whatnot. And so they're designing systems that are sustainable for like the next 10 or 20 years that they can enhance and expand on. But he said that it was the wrong approach. He actually was supposed to give a talk in 2020, which at GDC, which didn't happen because of COVID. And he said that when he looked, and that was after quote unquote 15 years of World of Warcraft. But then he said when he gave this speech very recently in 2025, he said that he looked over that speech and the notes and the PowerPoint he created. And he said he disagreed with a lot of what he wrote at that time. And he said that at the time they were really focused on making the things efficient and sustainable for the long term. But he said that what he noticed was that when he made one change that was kind of just different, novel and innovative and just different, players really loved that. It didn't mean that it was better, it was just different. And when they repeated that same thing in a future expansion because players really loved it, players actually were upset because they're like, dude, I just played this. I just did this. Now I have to do this again for another expansion. And that's exactly how I felt as a true fan. And so they realized that change is good for the sake of change to give your fans variety. And what was new and different and innovative felt interesting as a fan. And I remember kind of combining this with another speech from a guy, Justin Gary, that designed a game called Ascension. They had at the time like 23 expansions. And he gave a talk over at Gamma. I want to say it was in 2020, and I attended this talk. This is right around the time that we did Ascension Tactics. So I got to market a game of his right after this. And he talked about like what to do during your various expansions. And I think that as a company that wants to earn fans, you really have to listen to the fans, but then also lead the fans and say, I know you weren't asking for this particular thing, but it's different than what you're used to, and it's innovate. It kind of builds on what we're doing or what we've done with the first games, and fans will like it because it's different. It's like the same, if I made another expansion of Deliverance and instead of playing the Angels, you're playing the Saints now, or maybe you're playing both. It's different. It doesn't mean that it's better. It certainly wouldn't have been better for the very first game that came out, but it was it would be something that people would appreciate, and that the true fans would appreciate just for the sake of it being novel and new and interesting. And so this is what Justin Gary said, was that like your very first game needs to be, it's whatever the maximum amount of awesomeness in its purest form, and then the expansion should just be more of the exact same thing. That's the first expansion. But then the next expansion needs to be something new. You need to do something new. So like eventually Ascension did, a game where you had like a pirate ship that was, moving around the seas, and, rather than just card play against an opponent, you had card play with a pirate ship floating around in the middle of the table. And they had all sorts of different expansions. They had Ascension Tactics, which used the cards for like a tabletop miniatures war game to power your heroes and move them and stuff like that. And it was really interesting to see kind of all of the variety that they just gave their players. And a version of Ascension with a pirate ship is actually not something that I would want to play if I had never played Ascension before. I'd be like, this seems like really fiddly. But for players that were familiar with it, that was just a really cool, new, innovative experience that they were looking for. And that was, I think, one of the things that Justin Gary did really well with Ascension is really gave the fans something new to chew on, something that felt new, that felt innovative, that felt interesting, kind of almost justifying the support of the fans in his company. And for me playing World of Warcraft, I felt like I was getting the exact same thing for a long time, or things I didn't care about. It's like, or the things I really cared about, it would be like a year before any change was made. And my character is weak. Why is my character weak? And these other types of characters are strong. And oh, there's a patch, and my character, my rogue type or the hunter just didn't get addressed. I think probably half of the hunter players in World of Warcraft quit in the first few years because they just weren't that good compared to a lot of other classes, right?
Or
And
especially in PvP, you got the sense that things were artificially boosted. So you kind of felt like, oh, the meta right now is Warlock's really powerful. Everyone rolls Warlocks, and in a couple of months, well, now it's another class. Everyone goes roll, and it was almost like it was a way to kind of manipulate people to roll new characters and then level them up, which that's where it takes the time to get to max level, and that's more subscriptions, it's more money. So it almost felt like there was that kind of manipulation happening. I think people were very aware of that happening. Maybe Blizzard's like, oh, we're doing this behind the scenes. No one can figure it out. No, people figured it out. People are not as dumb as they think. So I think that also created a lot of bad will. It's like, can I just make this game balanced and fun? And I think one of the reasons why League of Legends exists is really the failure of Blizzard's marketing, because League of Legends should have never existed. Blizzard owned the entire demographic of like competitive fantasy, push button to do abilities, positioning, video games. They owned that, and they dropped the ball so badly within the competitive scene of World of Warcraft that League of Legends came up and took the win from their sales.
Yeah,
but in terms of like
they literally created the MOBA. Like the MOBA was a fan made mod on Warcraft 3, and it became Dota, and that became League of Legends, or rather League of Legends sprouted as a sort of a competitor. And it's super curious. I'll say two things that were the biggest kind of shocking takeaways that I received from that video. I want to say it's about an hour speech, but one of the things related to homogenization. Homogenization is when, like a rogue and a hunter and a warrior can all kind of do the same thing. And so it doesn't matter which one you bring with you to a raid. I remember back in the day, warriors had Mortal Strike, which cut your healing done on the target that was Mortal Strike by 40%. And that was a huge deal. Rogues had like a 10% heal cut, and I think hunters eventually got access to a 30% heal cut, right? And then one day they made that heal cut like the same across the board. Every heal cut in the game is only 10%. And that felt kind of bad at the time. And I remember, but not a huge deal. Like I was a rogue. It didn't actually affect me. It actually just weakened other classes and whatnot. And so I over time, they started giving new abilities to classes. And that just by giving new abilities to classes, it started to make, that every class feels kind of samey. You could take whatever class you wanted for damage, whatever class you wanted for healing and tanking and whatever. They just, you could take the druid or the warrior. It didn't matter who your main tank was. Back in the day, you had to have a warrior with, shield blocking as your main tank. And there was nothing that you could do about it. Well, I always viewed homogenization as a bad thing. And it turns out that the player communities in World of Warcraft, oh, and by the way, the development team viewed it that way too. He said that we didn't want things to be homogenized, so we actually would take away abilities and made characters feel unique. And they came up with this talent system that like every 10 or 15 levels, you got a meaningful choice for a very new and different ability. And so even within the same class, you'd be very different if you want to take mirror image or pyroblast. It's like you can't have both, you get to choose one, right? And so your character would feel very different, but players hated that. And they said that they were very vocal about how displeased they were with these changes. And it turned out that he said that we didn't change. Our vision remained the same, but our players changed. Our player base changed. They were okay with homogenization. They were okay with like, yeah, you could take my character or a warrior or a rogue and it's fine. I'm fine with that. I want to be the best version of my character I can be. And that really surprised them. And then another thing was like when they released their World of Warcraft Classic, they re-released the first version of WoW like 15 years into the game. They re-released servers that had classic WoW on it, and players hated that they had to like respec their talents. They had to spend money to change their talent builds and whatnot. Back in the day, you would build your character in a way that you could kind of raid if you wanted to. You could do 5-man dungeons if you wanted to, and you could PvP pretty well, all with the same build. Well, that was back then. Nowadays, players were no longer okay with being suboptimal in any one area. They needed, they would actually, what they would do is they would farm for, hours extra to just earn the money to be able to switch their talent specialization over and over. So they would switch when it's time to PvP and pay the gold for that, which takes time to earn. And then they would switch back to for raiding, and they needed an optimal build to deal the most damage for raiding that wasn't good in PvP. But they said this is the worst part about classic World of Warcraft. I hate this. But back in the day, that's how it was, and we were fine with it. And so he said the player base changed over time, and the development team did not respond to the way that what the players were saying they wanted. Kind of discounted it because it wasn't part of our vision. So he said the major change in World of Warcraft of the last 5 years has been to not only listen to the players, but to understand that our player base has changed and they're no longer the same as when they started. And so they when you release something into the world, this is kind of the last takeaway, and why I think it applies so well to what the people we're talking to on our podcast. When you release something into the world, it was your baby. You made every choice and every decision before it was released. But after it was released, it is now the community has ownership of it as much as you do, because they're the ones adopting it. They're the ones playing it. They're the ones advocating and evangelizing, we'll say, for your thing. And if you think, I guess, if you try to keep ownership of the product and not really take others' opinions and into consideration when making changes or when thinking about additional content to create, then you're going to lose them. They're going to, that's going to be like, me, where I used to play World of Warcraft. It's like, I just don't feel heard. I just kind of lose interest in the game, and then I fall off the bandwagon. But I've paid, I don't know, $5,000 to Blizzard over the years, like, or more, right? And me, a one person struggling, college graduate with very little extra disposable income, I always found that $15 a month to pay for my subscription. So what do you think, Sean? What do you think about that?
Well, I do know that Blizzard made more money selling a purchasable mount in World of Warcraft than they did in 1 week than they did in the entirety of StarCraft 2. Right? Yeah. So I think that was like a change in their kind of, we just spent like 3 years developing this new game, and we just sold a mount which took about a week to actually, and we made more money.
Guy made it
making that mount, made more money making that mount than selling the video game that had been developed. So I think that kind of shocked them. But I also noticed this in terms of Blizzard's marketing messaging being very strange. And around 2017, I remember at BlizzCon, their big push for 2017 or 2018 is around that time for BlizzCon was like, come to BlizzCon because we're a family and you get to be with your family. It's like, you're not a family. What are you talking about? You have to pay to enter. Which family do you have to pay to join? Right?
Yeah.
It's like, this is the worst marketing messaging ever. So, but again, they're tapping into people who maybe don't feel like they have a family. It's like, oh, well, I can find my family here at Blizzard. I just pay to join and have a surrogate family. So I just thought that was very strange marketing messaging. And almost like, again, coming to this replacement of things which are meaningful and durable in society with products. I think that's the danger when maybe corporations or things get too big.
Yeah.
In fact,
go ahead.
I have a friend who's a journalist, and he wrote this, and I thought it was quite poignant. And it comes down to this kind of consumer culture that is, I think, quite dangerous, both for just people individually, but also for businesses to adopt this. I don't think it's healthy. That's what my one friend who's a journalist says. He says, beyond social media and games, most of our economy is based on addictions. Food, gambling, porn, shopping. The less self-control you have, the more you consume, which is better for the economy, if not for you. Virtue demands sacrifice, usually of self-indulgence. You have to be strong to be good. And both of these things are often painful. A pain-free life is unlikely to be a good life. Its goal, more like a living death by convenience. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was very well put. And I think one thing you have to understand about life is that there is things which are uncomfortable, things you don't like to do. And this is included in the kind of enjoyment of products. I think you're going to have to work with a publisher to make the thing the way you want it to be, and also as a publisher, you're going to have to work with your audience to make the thing profitable. So I don't think you're ever going to have a product that's kind of painless. And oh yeah, I'm just going to throw it out there. It's going to be successful, and I won't have to do anything to it. There's this constant cycle of tweaking and modifying, using this community of genuine fans. You really could see them as investors into your company and into this product line. But I think, as you know, what's the idiom of World of Warcraft? Every king. It's escaping me now. The king of Arthur's father. Every king has a end of his reign. I butchered that quote, but basically, there's this element that no king reigns forever. I think that's the thing. So eventually, you might create a great product, but over time, I think it just kind of fades. That's okay.
Yep. Yeah. I would be remiss to fail to mention that in 2021 there was a lawsuit against Blizzard because there were Blizzard employees that were basically abusing their role and abusing their fans. And so they got sued by the California Civil Rights Department or something like that. It was like a class action lawsuit of people that had been sexually abused, that experienced sexual harassment or had been sexually abused at places like BlizzCon, and like fans that were developers like really took advantage of fans in that way. And there were, of course, high level executives. A lot of people were let go. This is all public information. You can all look it up. But it really, I guess it's
the symptom, isn't it?
It's funny because 2017, 2018, the message was, "Oh, we're a family." It's like, you did what to your family?
An abusive family.
Yeah, like you're a really messed up family. So yeah, so I think that it's easy to say, but it's harder to do. And nobody's perfect, but at the same time, like you can not sexually harass your fans, and that's probably a good thing. And so it was a symptom, in my opinion, of unchecked
of their philosophy, right? Because if you're going to treat your customers like an object for your own maybe selfish gratification, then you're going to treat your employees and your partners as well. That's just that kind of attitude of life will carry over into all areas of life. So as the expression says, he who is faithful with little will be faithful with much.
Right. And I think that a lot of people listening to this are like, why are you guys talking so much about World of Warcraft? But it all applies to you. You are the one who has to be faithful with little right now. You may have not a crowdfunding campaign under your belt yet. You may have a few. You may be one of these very successful companies in the industry, or at least perceived to be very successful in the industry. We have all types that listen to this podcast. But your job is to make the very best version of what you envision, and then to support that product. And part of the support of that product is to support your fans. And when people actually care enough to give an opinion, um, they're it's that's like what the only fans do that. And it's very possible that people will be entitled, that people will kind of take advantage of that. There are always bad actors in every I think in every organization, or group of fans. You have the crazy ones that talk all the time. I had one guy that trolled my mom and just called me out for being a terrible a terrible Christian, like taking advantage of everyone by taking their money. And anytime I had an update that had anything to do with money, I remember I charged $3 more shipping than I estimated in my first project. And oh man, that person had a field day. And then they were like, they had their big reveal one day where they were like, I'm not a Christian, I'm an atheist. And it was like, whoa, crazy. Anyway, next. And that person is still around. That person backed the next Kickstarter campaign, and it's just like, trolls me every once in a while. It's like, well, fine, but
You've made him a boss, haven't you, in the game?
Yes, actually, I did low key make that person. I don't think they'll realize it, but they definitely inspired a boss, which is funny. You troll my mom, you'll become a fallen prince in Deliverance. Okay.
Yeah.
So but yeah, so it was a really interesting experience. But kind of going back to this article, the first thing that really caught me were that not all customers are fans, and not all fans are the sort of customers that you can thrive with. And you've got like we'll call the generous stands is what Seth Godin said. I like true fans, 1,000 true fans, right? So you've got your true fans and you've got your cranky fans. And the cranky fans are the ones that are going to complain and whatnot. True fans will oftentimes give you more support, but they'll complain too if you do dumb stuff. I think that cranky fans will complain no matter what is the big difference. There are people that will complain no matter what. And then there are also, aside from true fans and people that complain, there are, I believe, fans that just don't have the capacity to care enough, if that makes sense. It feels like, for example, being in the board game design space, I, as a creator, am surrounded by board game designers all the time. People listening to this are board game designers. I might have some true fans that are board game designers, but I can say that generally, um, board game designers don't have the capacity to be a true fan of a company's products because they are focused on their own products and their own development and that kind of thing. They might enjoy games and whatnot, but most often they are advocating for their own products rather than others. And they don't, instead of investing money into all of your stuff, they might, support you a little bit, but they're not necessarily going all in to purchase your product for the sake of the product itself. Um, and I think that family is actually the same way. Friends and family, people that love you, that would support you, no matter what it is that you do, are going to support you. They're not necessarily supporting your product; they're supporting your vision and you as a person. And this is no better. There's no better articulation than of this example than my second Kickstarter. I have my first Kickstarter, tons of friends and family jumped on board. My second Kickstarter, very few friends and family jumped on board. Just like my core family, and everyone else was like, you're fine. You've got your start. We helped you get it off the ground, and now it's got to fly on its own, buddy. And I just think that if you're not a board game player, it's hard. It's impossible to be a true fan of a board game company, right? Almost, at least. And unless you're my mom, and then she's my fan, my mom and dad, right? But it's like hard to kind of see at first who would be your true fan and who wouldn't. But I really think the capacity to be a fan, a true fan, is something that is not possible from every person that you're dealing with. And I think that's important to realize, because it's it's a matter of like where you spend your time. Sean, before our podcast, you and I were talking about, you know, how, on a regular basis, people will share their Kickstarter links in our crowdfunding nerds community. And I keep the ones up there that have context where they're asking questions and asking like, how can we do X better? Or, if people are like, here's our campaign, its features, blah, blah, blah mechanics, and it's for 1 to 5 players, and check it out. Any help would be appreciated. Any feedback would be appreciated. I delete those left, right, and center because they're not looking for feedback. They're looking for backers, right?
Yeah.
And so
It's the wrong place, buddy.
yeah, yeah. To expand on that for us, share with what you shared with me.
Maybe because obviously people who design games are going to be backing games and playing games, but the people, particularly in the crowdfunding nerds community, are trying to get their own products off the ground. They're not necessarily trying to find the latest cool game. That's all well and good. So I think it's kind of a misplaced. It's a place that's not a great place to sort of advertise your campaign, because a bunch of designers are trying to make their own thing, and a lot of them also kind of understand the tricks of the trade, so to speak. So they see right through what you're doing because they've tried that, or they've thought about doing something like that. So it is interesting.
Yeah, and you've got like 2 likes on the post, and one is that designer liked their own post, and their mom who snuck into the crowdfunding nerds community and liked the post too. It's funny. But yeah, so it's you got to know your audience, but at the same time, you're never going to thrive if your community is filled with fellow designers, because they're not focused on you, they're focused on their own products. And you've got to get out there to the consumer base, people that just work a 9 to 5, that are huge fans of what it is that you made, and they love playing your game. And like, those people exist. You just have to connect with them somehow. And the only way to do that is to go out and market yourself, or rather share your product in circles that they travel in. Go to conventions, go to your local board game shop. When you share and people connect on Facebook, like you share, you do use Facebook ads or whatever, and you're gonna attract people. I remember, so I actually earned a client that, this last week, a client came on board that we had done work for in the past, and they run a coaching business, and they actually are very successful in their coaching business, and they do mostly corporate coaching now. And at the time, I remember we ran ads to a webinar that led to their kind of a personal coaching class that they put together. And we ran ads, and I remember, that there were tons of people that filled contact forms that, actually they signed up for the webinar. And then after the webinar, the call to action was, hey, call me, let's talk on the phone. And I remember our client's name is Jenny. She talked to so many little old ladies that were just kind of lonely. It was crazy because all of the leads, all of the conversion rate was happening for people that are 65 years old and above. It was kind of we'll call it like a life coaching type of product, type of course. And so people looking to better their lives and the lives of others, through life coaching. And it ended up being that all the people with lots of time on their hands and no money were the ones that called and filled up her time. So eventually we shut that one off and focused on other stuff. And and then, a couple of years later, she calls me and is like, hey, I have another idea. Can we run Facebook ads for this thing? And so we're doing it again. And she told me that actually there was one client that is in New York City that found me through those ads. That client went to my level 1 training. She flew out to my level 2 training, my level 3 training, level 4 training. And all of these things are just, if level 1 costs $3,000, level 2 is going to be like 10,000, and level 3 is going to be like 30,000, level 4, whatever. This lady flew to like the Bahamas to do a level 5 training with like 5 other people. It was like, hundreds. I mean, basically this lady has paid her like hundreds of thousands of dollars to do all of this stuff through that one. I mean, we probably spent, $2,000 on Facebook ads, and that one person, right? And it was just, it's mind blowing when you think about it. but it takes time, of course, to reveal those people. It takes effort to kind of cultivate those relationships. And I mean, even one is like incredible. You know, I had somebody drop like $3,500 on our Deliverance campaign because they wanted all the things. They wanted painted miniatures. They wanted 2 sets of painted miniatures, and they were like, "Oh, I could just be an angel investor and you know pay and just like you know pay an extra $500. Yeah, sure, I'll do that too." It's like, okay, you know, that's awesome, but they're in, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
it's important to yes, it's important to appreciate those people, but I still think that the way that you thrive is off of the person who spends, you know, for the base game and really loves it. And they're like, "Oh, I play." Like there's this one guy that I learned and I got to meet him last year and I'll meet him again probably this year. His name's Colin. He every single convention he goes to, every day, once every day, he will run a Deliverance game every single time. And the guy, or his name's Coley. Coley, I'm sorry. Um, he will run one game every day of every convention he attends, and he loves the game. And he plays with new people. He's not that. I don't want to say he's not that good at the game. He plays low difficulty. You know, like instead of playing like high difficulty levels, he just loves playing it, and he loves introducing it to new people. And when I met him, it was really cool. And it's like, you know, this guy right here that I'm looking at is a veteran, you know, of the military, and does he has we'll call him like a low income earner or whatever. You know, he's not like rich and can you know give me lots of benefit. And but what he does is he takes his limited income, he uses it to go to local conventions, and every single one of them he plays my game. It's like, dude, this is somebody that is a true fan that I need to invest into. How can I do that without asking him, because he doesn't have a lot of money to pay for stuff. Like he probably did back my expansion. I'm sure that he didn't get all the add-ons, but he is just a big fan of the game and he plays it all the time. He's probably logged 150 plays during the year, and you know with other people, and that is a person that you need to invest into. Like for
Mm-hmm.
me, that a person like that is somebody that will help me sell the game because he's introducing it to so many others and giving them a delightful experience. So, how can I invest into people like that without also at the same time asking them for money all the time?
Mm-hmm.
So the way that I have kind of elected to do that, and you know, certain games, I think, by the way, if you have like an 18 card micro game that plays in 10 minutes and is like a little filler game, I don't know that you can I don't know that people will have the capacity to to again, you know, kind of back to that capacity thing. We were talking about capacity of designers. They don't have the capacity to be a true fan a lot of the time. I think that some games, people don't have the capacity to be a true fan of a game that is like a 10-minute filler game. But over time, like a company like Button Shy Games, which only releases tiny games with cards in them, like one every single month, they have true fans because people like, you know, their whole line of games, you know, the like all the games like that. They get one, it becomes something enough to kind of enough meat on the bone to satisfy, I guess.
And often
But
investing
yeah.
in those people creates the best products. So
Hmm.
an example of this would be Counter Strike. Counter Strike was a mod, community mod
Hmm.
of Half Life, I believe,
Yep.
and Valve then employed that team and
Hmm.
they became the Counter Strike team. Now Counter Strike is one of the biggest esports in the world. It's
Yep.
just an example. Some of the best products actually come from your own community of
Yep.
people suggesting things. I'm sure you have examples in the Deliverance community of maybe fans suggesting, "Oh, would it be cool if we had like this?" And they're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's actually do that." And I think you've
Yeah.
even employed some people from like the Deliverance community to help develop the game, right?
Yeah, actually, one guy who was just a really big fan was he was like, "You don't have a Discord," and I'm like, "I feel like a boomer right now, not having Discord, but I don't really use it all the time because I'm not like a gamer, like a video gamer." And he's like, "I'll start a Discord for you." I'm like, "Okay, I'll like let's start a Discord." And he voluntarily ran that thing. I want to say he spent like 10 hours a week on it just for a year or year and a half, constantly it, you know, being involved and being helpful and whatnot. And eventually it was like, I need to like bring somebody on to do some volunteer, like some community work. Because one of the things that I do is every quarter I release a Deliverance scenario that's free to everyone who owns the game. It's one of the ways that we give back is like ongoing content for our product that people can play. And there are fan made scenarios that people make and whatnot, but like an officially supported tested scenario every single quarter, with new art and new boss and things like that. And I actually asked him if he would develop the scenarios for me, and I'd pay him a little on the side. And so he worked like 4 or 5 hours a week on this stuff. And eventually it was like, hey, we made enough money with our Council of the Fallen campaign that I need to I need somebody to kind of help more. Would you like to quit your job and work for me full time? And he said, okay. So, yeah, so definitely a fan turned into a really fantastic employee.
We had one of our clients asking us to kind of come on for their company as their kind of dedicated marketing people, in that we'd run all their marketing. And I had to sort of explain to them it's not really how we're set up at Crowdfunding Nerds. We kind of do 4 things really well, and we're more designed to plug into an existing marketing team and take that off their plate so they can focus on like community engagement or contests or these other things that we don't do. And I suggested that this particular person that they start by, if you want to employ someone to become like your full-time marketing person in your company, start with your fans. They're going to be your best. They're going to know your products. They're going to know what makes your products cool. They're probably already have marketed your games anyway to their local friends and family, or even at conventions and things. Like that's a great place to start in terms of employing people. So if you're ever looking to build up your team and start employing people, looking at your fan base is the first place that you want to go. You want to kind of just submit an open call to folks saying, hey, I got this new opening in the company. Here's what it is. Anyone interested? And that's going to be a great place to find your first employee.
Yep, absolutely. People that are passionate about your products, and about what it is, the mission, right? In fact, that's kind of how you came on board, right?
Mm-hmm.
I connected with you because you interviewed me originally about Deliverance.
Yeah.
And it's like this person has like a similar mindset to me, similar mission, similar experience, and that kind of thing. I feel like it's like I could teach you marketing, and if you'd like, and you were like, sure. So
Here we are.
that's right. So I think other ways that you can involve your audience, I think, are really important. Ways that I do that, I have surveys, really really valuable. If you survey your audience, you share the results, anonymous results with people, and say, these are the changes that we're going to make, or these are the things we're thinking about doing based on the results of this survey. That's super valuable. For me, one thing that I'm doing is I am kind of creating. So I turned Deliverance into, I'll call it a little more of a living card game experience. I guess it's a dungeon crawl sort of tactical skirmish game, but I'm updating cards that I've already printed that were in the base game. I'm updating them to be more useful, and I'm re-releasing them in the second edition. But I'm also giving people the ability to just grab the new cards in an upgrade kit. But then in addition and beyond that, I'm creating brand new talent cards, like new abilities in essence, for the existing characters that fans suggest. So I asked for fans to give me ideas for their favorite characters, and I said I'm going to turn these into new abilities and skills that we're going to use for which actually I'm almost finished wrapping up right now. It's one of the Excel spreadsheets I'm looking at, and we have hundreds of entries, hundreds from fans that are like, my favorite character is Sardius, and he really needs the ability to, to pull people in and punch 2 people at the same time or whatever, and it's like, okay, I'll think about that. There are people that have logged like 500 games with Sardius, and I haven't even played that many. So what do they want, and to just be able to give a tiny sliver of your fans something that delights them because you heard them, you'll be able to give a tiny sliver of something to other fans in the future, but each time you give, I remember one guy asked for a baseball diamond. He's a little league umpire. He's like a little league umpire, little league coach. And he was like, "Oh, Fallbrook is missing a baseball field, which Fallbrook is the town that my game is based in." And I said, "Okay, I'll add one." And he's like, "I would buy the neoprene mat if you added it." I was like, "Okay." And it took about an hour for my artist to add the baseball diamond to the neoprene mat. And I did that for just one fan because he mentioned it in passing because baseball is the thing he's passionate about. And it's those types of opportunities, just being able to listen to your community and what it is that they have to say, what it is they have to contribute, that will really help. And I'll mention, one final thing, just really kind of going back to that World of Warcraft, speech or whatever presentation. One thing that they do now is they say, is this solution going to last for years and years? No, it's not. But that's a problem for our future selves to deal with. And our future selves are very smart. Our future selves are very capable. Our future selves are going to be able to solve that problem at that time with a solution that is right for that time. This thing that we're doing right now is right for today. And they are, I think that they're generally getting a much better response overall. I was surprised that World of Warcraft is rather stable now. And they're getting a much more broadly positive response from their fans. And there are a number of things that they're doing to make that happen. But I think that that actually gave me a lot of comfort, because it's like, I'm trying to solve the world's problems like today for all time. And I realized I don't have to do that. I just have to think about the next thing. What am I doing today? And I don't need to think about, like, one thing I really wanted to do is I wanted to make sure that all of my characters are capable and future-proofed from now until the end of time. But, that is just not realistic. If I release 20 expansions, there's going to be power creep, there's going to be issues, and some of the old characters might not be very capable compared to the newest characters. And it's just a reality that I will probably have to deal with. I've done my best to kind of to stop and to kind of get in front of that. But that's a problem for future Andrew to deal with. Future Andrew is smart enough. Future Andrew will be able to handle it. Maybe we'll re-release certain characters that are updated, or my attempt is to give them new skills, new talent cards that allow them to keep pace with the new content. And so that's kind of how some of the ways that we are trying to handle this. So,
Great. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah. So I guess I'd love to know what you guys have to say about this 1,000 fans, 1,000 true fans. What do you think makes a true fan? What companies are you a true fan of? I would love to have a discussion like this in the Crowdfunding Nerds community. So I guess we'll let Robot Richard send us out, and see you in the community.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. For more resources, articles, and to listen to past podcasts, please visit us at crowdfundingnerds.com. And if you have a crowdfunding question, we also have a page on our site where you can send a message directly to us. Please visit crowdfundingnerds.com/question. And if your question is a great question, we may include it in a future podcast. Thank you all again for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next week. Stay nerdy.
Hey, Crowdfunding Nerds, it's Andrew Lowen, and I wanted to introduce you guys to the Crowdfunding Nerds Academy. If you don't know, we have a do-it-yourself course system that will teach you how to build, excite, and prepare a crowd to fund you on your launch day, and that is our goal. I have used these systems to help raise over $30 million for tabletop campaigns, over 200 tabletop crowdfunding campaigns since 2019. I've generated over $100 million through e-commerce sales using these processes. These courses teach you how to replicate our results. They're made for the small creator. Over 150 of those people were first-time creators. These courses contain hundreds of hours of podcast discussions and tons of details that are almost impossible to find on the internet. And they have been distilled into concentrated courses that you can absorb quickly. They are designed to generate results. We hold nothing back. Visit crowdfundingnerds.com/academy to learn more, or just Google search Crowdfunding Nerds Academy.